I think now with all the charts and the data being present and more upfront in the document, it's really going to help us, especially as we start to track things over time, to be a little more data driven and make it easier for us and future water commissioners to understand the intricacies of the water utility. It sounds simple, but it's a pretty complicated little beast under the hood. Is there a motion or any other comments? Both are appropriate at this time.
I'd move to adopt the water utility master plan as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? This is so important. Let's use a roll call vote for this as well.
Commissioner Tlako, Commissioner Meyer, Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Schneider,
Aye.
Commissioner Gebhardt,
Aye.
and Commissioner Nurbin.
Aye. The plan's adopted. Congratulations. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned. And we'll immediately reconvene as the Sewer Utility District Commission, and everyone that was here before is still here. So we will move right on to approval of the meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 8th?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. Which brings us to our first discussion item, sewer budget discussion and recommendation for borrowing or self-funding for the fiscal year 2024 capital expenditures and 5-year capital improvement program. Director Lundin will give us a quick intro here.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We are otherwise looking to seek some policy guidance ahead of generating the utility. So I do want to be clear, we're looking for guidance. While we did provide some monetary examples in the packets, we're really just looking for the direction as it relates to the capital funding moving forward. And then you will see the actual generation of the budget numbers based on that policy guidance that you provide here tonight. As an overview, we have a priority project listed in our capital funding, which is the replacement of Lift Station E. It is our biggest lift station. It takes flow from several other tributary lift stations and is the next upstream capacity issue in the East Trunk sewer that must be addressed to help reduce the number of sanitary sewer overflows and basement backups that we see typically in wet weather events. That project for the replacement of the station, which is also beyond its life cycle, the standalone project for that itself is estimated to be $8.8 million, and with some of the ancillary projects that would also address the surcharging adjacent to this station, the range would go upwards of $11 million. The total in the 5-year CIP is approximately $18.8 million. We're looking at a projected year-end balance of $5.1 million, with some additional undesignated cash reserves. You may recall a year ago we came forward for the water utility to request a policy to be able to reallocate portions of those undesignated cash reserves. We do anticipate that coupling with the budget this year to ask for a similar policy for the utility, and if otherwise considered or approved, there is approximately $1.3 million of undesignated cash reserved that, with permission, could be reallocated towards some of these capital funding projects. Even with all of that, at current levy and current rates, we're projected to be in a deficit for capital funding by year 3 of the 5-year plan. So ahead of either modifying the 5-year plan or otherwise adjusting the budget, we're looking first for your guidance on a couple different options. Certainly number one would be to reduce the number of projects in the 5-year CIP or slow the implementation. So in other words, we could do less projects over a longer period of time so that we spread out those capital needs. The majority of those that are listed in the 5-year CIP do deal with sewer capacity issues. Those are those that are leading to those sewer overflows or basement backups. So we do have concerns that slowing too much may be subject to the frequency of those rain events that cause those backups. We could also certainly look at either eliminating or pausing on the other projects that are not related to Lift Station E and instead concentrate only on that project. You may recall that on an annualized basis, we do many other routine capital projects such as pipelining to try and keep the water out of the system. That also helps address our surcharging, as well as routine replacement of pumps or other infrastructure related to lift stations. We are concerned that too much of a delay in some of those capital projects could cost the utility more in the end, that unfortunately we've only seen costs rise over time, and there is a concern that if we delay too much that those costs could go up, but on the contrary, they could also be reduced. We could see a change in either material costs or the labor market that could result in waiting being a better prospect than what we're seeing right now. So to be clear, regardless of the direction, we will otherwise address the CIP accordingly. So the one that was otherwise provided was an example, but it can certainly be adjusted. We truly only budget on an annualized basis. We're just trying to do our best job of showing you what the 5-year recommendations are as we do an outlook. But those aren't decisions that we're asking you to make either tonight or as a part of those budgets. So with that said, we are projecting again a deficit by year 3 in capital funding. So we're seeking guidance on the Sewer Utilities District Commission's direction to borrow for all or some of those capital projects, to self-fund for those, or to use some combination of those two options. And when we look at borrowing versus self-funding, certainly on the borrowing side, there is the view of the climate of interest rates and whether or not it's a good time to borrow. To be clear, we're not asking to borrow now. The project itself for Lift Station E alone wouldn't likely be bid until third quarter of next year. We do have some capital funding available, so if at the time of that project the interest rates aren't right, we could certainly move forward with at least starting the project. And depending on the decisions made about those budgets would depend on whether we have enough self-funding for that project or whether borrowing would be warranted. What we don't want to do is miss the opportunity to self-fund if that's the direction given by the commission to otherwise do so. On a staff side, we would note that time is of the essence as it relates specifically to that Lift Station E project. We are looking to begin construction in the fiscal year 2024, but it is likely that even that would span at least 2 fiscal years, which would allow us not only the capital funding in 2024, but also 2025 for that project. So I'm going to take maybe a pause on this to start and ask for some guidance as it relates to capital funding, as it relates to borrowing, self-funding, or some combination of the two.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a healthy discussion about this morning. I'll just kind of cut to the end. I think some combination of we always self-fund a little bit, but we shouldn't be afraid to use debt where it makes sense. Like I think bullet 4 reflects past policy for larger pieces of infrastructure, like a lift station that's probably going to have a 30 or 40 year useful life. We've tended to borrow for those. In the packet, you might have seen some of the assumed interest rates. Those were provided by, I think, by Ehlers recently. And while they're certainly higher than we've enjoyed recently, at least the 10-year note wasn't completely outrageous. It was 4.5%, which is kind of in line with where inflation settled down to here. So it's not terrible. It'll cost us more certainly than we've paid in the past. But we want to obviously balance taking on too much, just paying too much in interest over the life of the program, versus more principal. But I think some combination, like me personally, of funding what we can with what the means we have, taking on debt where it makes sense, but also being sensitive to how the cost of that all flows into the tax rate structure. So we should look at the user rates too, the user fee portion. Sewer is an interesting one to me, where the value of the service isn't determined by the value of the structure it's hooked up to. It's taking the same product away from the house no matter what. So I think it's appropriate to look at all of it to some extent. And certainly, as Kristen mentioned, once we have better idea what these projects cost, timing them appropriately, because even if we self-fund some and borrow some, they may not fit into our ability to budget. I think one point that is important to point out is there's the discussion of using tax levy. That's a different discussion if you're levying for increased capital charges versus taking on debt. Debt is exempt from the levy limit discussion, so if you take on debt and it raises the levy, that's exempt from it makes my head hurt to think about why the state made that distinction, but that's the distinction they made. So that we've only got, as we talked about last night, we've only got 248,000, I think, available of total levy capacity for the whole city, not just the sewer utility. That's under 5 cents per thousand, which isn't a lot of margin to play with. I think we'd be wise to preserve that for future flexibility. I'm happy to entertain other people's opinions, but that sums up where the discussion sort of ended up this morning anyway.
And perhaps we can't have one conversation without the other. We were maybe, trying to get the inclination on borrowing versus self-funding to start before we went into the discussion about the sewer levy versus user rate. And I will certainly not claim to be an expert by any means on the levy side. I will just otherwise clarify with the support of finance staff, hopefully, that we do have the ability to apply the levy increase between the two funds rather than on a pro rata basis. So it's not a direct comparison in terms of the impact on the sewer levy versus the impact on the general levy.
It might get us an extra penny because
Well,
of the difference of the amount of equalized value that's in versus out. But
And I guess to that point,
about
it
5
is
cents.
just a matter if you were looking at it at what a penny on the sewer levy gets us in comparison to 10 cents on the rate or $1 on the residential user charge. It is the difference between $19,000 and $45,000. So again, understanding that it is an impact to the user in the end, no matter what, there is a difference in what it provides in terms of that net funding increase.
Any other feedback from any of the sewer utility district commissioners? Commissioner Parrish.
I didn't understand either why it was kind of two separate agenda items, because I keep going ahead to the sewer levy. I appreciate the discussion, but you guys have already had it. If interest is indeed as cheap as it is in the packet, it is tempting. I guess I just don't really believe that that's what it will be. Like 4.5% or 5%. I mean, that's a great rate. Historically, from 2015 through 2018, the rate was $1.90 or above, and then a few years ago we dropped it down to $1.62, $1.60. I think that's because we paid off some debt and other
We revalued.
so it enabled us to drop down.
And we opted out of the green infrastructure program, which significantly reduced the levy impact.
So if you self-funded, have you done the analysis yet? Like what that would come up to? Is it $1.70?
Well,
'Cause that's
again, we were trying to get some guidance before we put all the numbers together, because we do understand, especially I was here last night as well, there is an immense amount of discussion about the impact on the levy. And as staff, we wouldn't want to come forward with a budget that otherwise proposed, for example, an increase on the levy if the Sewer Utility District Commission wasn't otherwise interested in increasing the levy at all. And so there is certainly ways to provide capital funding either through the levy or through the rate. And so we wanted to understand the tolerance. That too can be a combination of the two. It doesn't have to be exclusively restricted to the levy or the rate, but that's why we tried to give the example of what we gain in terms of, again, a penny on the levy versus 10 cents on the rate, was just to show what the comparison is. We would have to raise rates more steeply in comparison to what they are now to gain the same amount of net funding increase as a penny on the tax rate.
Yeah. Well, I just think we may have dropped rates artificially low for when we knew we had all this upcoming stuff. I know we had those levy limits. That's
Well, we
partially
kept
why
the
we
budget flat, but we revalued all the property.
Well,
So
that's
the
why it
net-
dropped
the-
down. Okay.
Yeah, that and the green infrastructure
Okay.
program,
So the tax
which
never
we were
went up.
paying in
Okay.
money, but we were only getting
Got it.
50 cents on the dollar back. So
Okay. Well, there's some formula that makes sense. So we need more analysis.
I think it's different if you add the levy to self-fund versus adding levy because you took on debt. One counts against the limit and one doesn't. So if you look at some of the numbers in there, you'd be hard pressed to save more, raise the rates more than, I think, 5 or 6 cents a thousand, and we'd hit that $250,000 a year pretty quickly. But if you did it via borrowing, it would be higher than that, but it wouldn't count against your levy limit. We're down to our last 5 or 6 cents, depending on which entity you're talking about, with levy limit ability. I
And
wouldn't
that
want to flush it down the drain for the lack of risk of creating a joke there, but
And that is I guess, a policy that we're looking for as well. That again, there's the difference between the idea that you're not interested in impacting the levy at all versus you're not interested in impacting the levy as it relates to levy limits. Because obviously the end user, the result is the same. Their levy is increased, whether it's for debt or whether it's for self-funding. The result in terms of their payment is the same. But if you give us policy direction that a levy rate increase due to borrowing is acceptable, but a levy rate increase due to self-funding is not acceptable, then that helps guide us as we look at the capital funding in terms of where we may be able to do so and the timing of such, because obviously we wouldn't increase rates now for a borrowing. We're not proposing a borrowing. There's not one actively to do so. So then we wouldn't otherwise be proposing a levy rate increase, but we would certainly be signaling that there would be one if there had to be a borrowing.
Can I just clarify something?
sure.
so-
Commissioner Schneider.
You will have accrued some money that has accrued over the years, and you had some left over from the other sewer project, and it looks as though on page 8 here that you're switching a little bit of funding around so that you're putting more in the sanitary lift station fund that used to be in the in one of the other funds, the main force fund. So it looks like you are doing some efforts to accumulate funding for this project, and I'm just wondering, in aggregate, how much of the project do you think you can accrue without increasing the levy? I mean, where are we in terms of the needle in terms of funding this whole $18 million?
Well, again, the balance in all of the capital counts right now is 5.1 million. So that's if we requested a budget transfer to put them all into the lift station fund, there would be $5.1 million, or we project that there would be $5.1 million at year end. So for lift station E alone, if we were going to self-fund, we would need approximately $3.2 million to get us to the 8.8.
Gotcha.
I think it works out to be a 10 or 15 year plan if it's if there's no amount of levy.
So I
the
agree that we
board.
should minimize, I mean, we don't want to take on unnecessary debt. I mean, debt, you wouldn't call it unnecessary, but given the fact that interest rates are not yet as low as we are accustomed to, it makes some sense, as the mayor was saying, to aggregate some money to see what we can accumulate and maybe increase the levy a little bit, and then as we reach the point of needing to borrow, then we have some of it already accrued, and we don't go out to market to borrow the whole amount. That makes more sense to me, just from a practical standpoint.
There's some ability to look at timing of projects too. It might be likely that all 18 million doesn't have to happen in the next 5 years. We're probably about 10 years or so away from the East Trunk sewer debt rolling off, and then that creates capacity within the levy to pay more too. But one of the other things we talked about was, after getting through this year's budget, looking at this more long range. We're going to be doing some other long range capital planning for the city on other items. We may as well throw this on there as well, because we'll be doing the same exercise, and it's all stuff we have to do in the next 5-10 years anyway. So I know it's a little bit difficult in your chair to sit there tonight and you don't have any real specificity about what projects, exactly what dollars, at what timing, and there's no longer range forecast on rates, but it certainly was a struggle when I read through the packet too, and we discussed that this morning. So I think everything's on the board. Moving projects around in time, using self-funding, borrowing where it makes sense, like for larger items that are, more capital intensive and have a long lifetime.
Well, and maybe if I might summarize a little bit, I'm not, or I'm hearing from those that spoke, maybe more support for levy increases for borrowing than for self-funding, but there's not opposition to reviewing rates and what they may be able to provide for self-funding to either soften the cushion of future borrowing, or at least to provide more seed money as we move forward to discuss the timing of those projects.
I think my personal opinion is I'd look more on the user fee side for more self-funding capacity, because if we use it on the levy side up front, we're eating away at the rest of the city's last nickel of potential taxing authority without going to a referendum. We're extraordinarily thin there. That's my opinion. I don't get the final say. We got 8 other commissioners, well, 7 tonight. Commissioner Meyer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, we can always reject a future borrowing later. We're not committing to anything tonight. would like to too, but I wouldn't want to use our last nickel of taxing authority.
But you don't have to. You could do it through rates.
Yeah, but I'm just saying yes on rates, no on levy.
And I just,
I don't know.
correct me if I'm wrong, I
that's
just
clear
heard
for
you,
everyone.
you suggest self-fund versus borrow, which again, I know was our intent to try and separate the questions to try to get to the idea that if we're self-funding, that then the conversation about rates versus levy comes into play in terms of how we're gaining that net increase. So, okay.
Good to clarify. Any other feedback from the commission? Is that enough feedback to bring forward a budget in a couple weeks?
Yes, I think
Okay.
we've got some, certainly a lot of math to do that we would have to do anyway, but understanding the guidance helps us put the numbers where we think they should be.
Okay. Any other parting comments, or is there a desire to move on to the next topic? Next topic, I heard. Okay. Next item was sewer budget discussion and recommendation for increasing the levy or user rates.
We ended both together.
We did both.
We're good.
We did two at once. All right, we did it all at once.
Yes.
Fantastic. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we are adjourned. We will now convene as the Common Council and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's do the roll call.
Alderman Strelchuk is absent. Alderman Talaco. Alderman Meyer. Alderman Hancher.
Here.
Alderman Bach.
Here.
Alderman Parrish.
Here.
Alderman Schneider.
Here.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Here.
And Mayor Nurbin.
Here. First up, we have personal appearances and public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. If you desire to be heard on any agenda item, you may be heard when that item is considered on the agenda. Please speak into the mic. Time limit is 5 minutes. Seeing no members of the public, I think we can move on to public officials' reports. I have none this evening. City Administrator?
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, just 3 quick announcements this evening. Last month, I broadcast to the council sitting here in September that we would have representatives from WISDOT at our meeting here tonight to provide an update on the I-43 expansion project. Due to the anticipated length of our utility meeting discussions this evening, they have agreed to lay over until our meeting in November. So we'll have the I-43 update here at our meeting at 7:30 p.m. on November 14th. Secondly, Halloween is approaching, and per the city ordinance, trick-or-treat hours will be held on Sunday, October 29th, between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. on a community-wide basis. Certainly, we have many homeowners associations and subdivisions throughout Mequon that may have alternative trick-or-treating hours, but citywide standard hours will be 4 to 7 on Sunday, October 29th. And then lastly, we just wrapped up a discussion on the sewer budget policy direction from the Utility Commission. We have now identified a date for those sewer and water budget meetings, as was referenced last evening at our Appropriations Committee meeting. Those meetings will be taking place on the evening of Monday, October 30th, starting at 6:30 p.m. here in this room. So mark your calendars. We'll have Carrie from our office send out an invite so that you can get it on your calendars. But Monday, October 30th, we'll take up the utility budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. I just remembered I do have one announcement. So I'm going to back up one half of a step on the agenda. On Monday this week, the Wisconsin Policy Forum formally announced that the Southern Ozaki Fire Department is receiving the Intergovernmental Cooperation Award, being given out to a governmental entity that exhibited high degree of cooperation and collaboration, and that's a huge win for the residents of Mequon and Thiensville. It's a prestigious award, and it's good to get recognition for the good work going over on at the fire department, and for all the hard work from staff members from Mequon and Thiensville that spent many sleepless nights and long days getting that up and running. It's a fantastic achievement, so everyone should be very proud. There'll be a celebration and a presentation of that award later in November, and several members of both communities will be present, I'm sure. But congratulations to the Southern Ozaki Fire Department. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have 11 sets of boards and commission minutes to approve. Is there a motion or a motion to exclude one of those items for discussion? No one wants to approve the consent agenda. Okay, motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on any of those 11 sets of minutes? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the consent agenda is approved. That brings us to ordinances. Ordinance 2023-1654, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of the Mequon Municipal Code, eliminating the bond requirement for certain city officials. This was recommended by Finance and Personnel on September 12th. There was a first reading at Common Council last month, also on September 12th.
Move approval.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Talaco. Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Bach.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
And Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
And that ordinance is approved. Next on to resolutions. Resolution 4072, a resolution awarding a contract for fiscal year 2023 auditing services to Baker Tilly from Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the amount of $32,750. This was recommended earlier this evening by Finance and Personnel Committee.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments on this item? I'll make one quickly. It's a one-year extension. We have a end of a 5-year contract recently. We're extending it one more year, and then the following year, we're going to be entering into a combined quote for auditing services for the city of Mequon, the village of Thiensville, the library, and I think Southern Ozaki Fire Department as a package deal, and hopefully get some cost savings due to the volume of that work being executed at once. So another area of collaboration, maybe a smaller one than the fire department, but another example nonetheless. We had a motion and a second. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please say, oh, we should call the roll. This is monetary. Please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Bach.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Talaco.
And 4072 is approved. Resolution 4073, a resolution awarding the 2024 road improvement design contract for Highland Road and Fiesta Lane to Clark Dietz Incorporated of Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the amount of $58,000. So recommendation forthcoming from Public Works.
This was unanimously recommended, and I move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the alderman? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Bach.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Talaco. Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And that item is approved. On to Resolution 4074, a resolution approving a purchase of 4 2024 Dodge Durango Sport Utility Vehicles from Ewald Automotive Group of Hartford, Wisconsin, and the purchase and installation of associated equipment from General Communications of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the amount not to exceed of $213,234. There's a recommendation earlier this evening coming forth from Public Safety.
Yeah. So both 4074 and 4075 are kind of together. We previously approved 4 Ford vehicles. After further review, those vehicles were not available until 2025. So we needed 4 vehicles. So we went back, or Chief went back and was able to secure 4 Dodge Durango sport utility vehicles that will be available 2024. So we'll have 4 in 2024, and we're just moving the other 4 Fords to 2025. So there's nothing new here. That's just a change. Both were unanimously approved.
Thank you.
Move approval.
The motion
4074.
for 4074. Motion, is there a second?
Second.
So everyone out there, stop looking for the Fords pretty soon. Be on the lookout for the Dodges. You've been warned. Any further comments or questions?
One
Alderman
question.
Gephardt.
Was there a change in pricing on that?
No change in price, correct, Chief? Yep.
Thank you.
Good question. Any more comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll on 4074.
Alderman Bach.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Gebhardt.
Aye.
Alderman Telacco. Alderman Meyer.
Tough to vote for a Dodge, but aye.
And Alderman
If you would have
Hancher.
had it, they would have voted.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. And then the companion resolution, Resolution 4075, resolution amending Resolution 4065 to change the model year of the squad purchase from 2024 to 2025.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. There's no money involved, so all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And that item's approved. We have no specified unfinished business from prior meetings. And specified new business, we just have a couple of mayoral appointments to the Festivals Committee, Leah McHenry and Brett Benson. So we're up to nearly full capacity after this on the Festivals Committee. The success is contagious. More people want to be a part of it. That's good. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And those appointments are approved. Next, we just have one motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.